US President Donald Trump's tax cuts appear to have backfired, hitting the government's budget deficit. Tax revenues failed to keep pace with government spending in the last fiscal year, leading to a budget deficit of nearly $780 billion. That's 17% or $113 billion higher than the year before. The tax cuts also forced the government to borrow more heavily to cover spending, which rose by more than 3% to $4.1 trillion. Military spending jumped $32 billion, while spending on education fell by $48 billion or 43%. Total government borrowing increased by $1 trillion to $15.8 trillion. The country's total debt stands at more than $21.5 trillion. While still campaigning, Trump said he would pay it off in 8 years, and he also argued the tax cuts would pay for themselves through stronger economic growth. But the numbers show that faster growth doesn't necessarily lead to a lower deficit.
And Max Wolff joins me now from New York City. He's a managing partner at research consultancy Multivariate. Good to have you back with us, Max. So, debt and deficit, this is something that Donald Trump had campaigned that he would aim to cut if he became president. Obviously, that isn't happening. Spending is going up, as is the deficit. Why? What are you blaming it on? Why is it as high as it is right now?
So great to be here, always a pleasure, and thanks for having me. I think there's no mystery in this mystery. So when you earn a bunch less money by forgiving the needs of corporations who are doing pretty well anyway, forgiving them the need of having to pay as much taxes, while at the same time you increase your spending, you have the mystery result of taking in less, putting out more, and ending up with bigger deficits on an annual basis and a bigger contribution to our already substantive U.S. government debt. So I don't know if it's sort of a major detective work to figure out what happened here. The big question is, are we going to do something about it, or are we going to have sort of a situation we've had in the past where we talk about fixing it during election time and then get right to work making it worse when the election's over?
And Donald Trump, I guess, is banking on the fact that cutting corporate taxes will eventually boost the economy by creating more jobs, more spending, and the rest of it. Does that argument hold true?
No. So we've been flirting with this sort of always popular, always exciting. It'd be wonderful if you could do it, but it's the budgetary equivalent of eat cake, lose weight. It's been forecast by various sort of pundits, that's a nice choice of phrase, since the 1980s. And every time we've tried it, we've been shocked to learn that when you cut taxes, we don't cut spending enough. And so we end up usually with bad social priorities. Think about your good intro here, slashing education, but giving more money into the corporate economy when we're already in a boom. And then we always have bigger deficits and bigger debts because that's kind of what happens when you cut taxes without cutting spending.
And Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin put out a statement in response to the deficit saying that the administration still has plans to cut wasteful spending. It defended investing in America's military after years of underspending under President Obama. I mean, are they valid arguments? Do you think that we will see more cuts to spending, and this is just, I guess, a bit of a precursor to that?
So I think it's a stretch to call them valid arguments. I mean, everyone wants to cut whatever they don't like anyway and nothing else. But the military story we hear all the time too. The U.S. military was not devastated under President Obama. The United States does more military spending than every other country on earth combined. So unless we're preparing for an intergalactic showdown, it doesn't make much sense to spend this much money on the military, especially if the budget is out of balance, and it very drastically is here. That being said, we're fairly stingy in our spending on most of our social programs, so we're going to cut things that we already underspend on. We're going to spend more on things we already overspend on, and we're going to spend more in the form of tax cuts. There are some benefits to tax cuts, and there are some advantages to loosening certain restrictions and taxes, but every time the public here in the U.S. has been promised that this eat cake, lose weight diet was finally going to work, we've ended up fatter than we were before the promise, and I'm pretty sure we will again.
Interesting. Okay, Max Wolff, good to have you as always. Thank you for that.